Welcome to the Moss Art Center in Blacksburg, Virginia for week number 3 of 3304 Kickoff. I'm Tyler Katz, joined alongside Clint McLeod. This week, Virginia Tech on the road in Chapel Hill, North Carolina to take on the North Carolina Tar Heels. Virginia Tech, they were on the road in North Carolina last week, but in Durham to take on the Duke Blue Devils. What did you see in that matchup?
Yeah, Virginia Tech was able to avenge last season's 45-10 crushing defeat at home on primetime television with a 38-31 convincing victory in Durham while missing 22 players, including a lot of their secondary. It was carried on the back by the rushing and kick-returning play from Khalil Herbert with over 300 all-purpose yards. Braxton Burmeister again gets the start for Virginia Tech as Hendon Hooker was once again sidelined, and Burmeister, a dual-threat quarterback that Cornelson utilizes greatly in that running game, but is yet to be tested in the passing game, and we'll see how North Carolina mixes it up this week.
Meanwhile, North Carolina returns home after a road bout in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts to take on Boston College. A tight game that ended with Boston College missing a two-point conversion that was ran back by the Tar Heels to get the win 26-22. A big stat in that game, North Carolina forced Boston College to throw the ball 56 times in that game. That helped propel them into the AP Top 10, where 4 ACC schools find themselves this week.
Yeah, topping it off with Clemson at 1, North Carolina not far behind at 8, and Virginia Tech sitting at 19, looking in at the moment. But with the ACC championship game looming, this is almost a must-win victory for Virginia Tech to keep their name in the conversation with the likes of Clemson and Notre Dame.
Well, North Carolina, while they have been able to perform offensively, one player has struggled, and that's Daz Newsome, who performed last year. For more on that, we go to Jake Lyman.
That's right, Tyler. Daz Newsome has not gotten off to the 2020 start that he would have liked. Back in 2019, he reached over 1,000 yards receiving, but just 3 catches in the first 2 games for the Tar Heels. What better game to get going than against Virginia Tech? Plenty of family ties for Daz when it comes to the Hokies. His older brother Dion and his father Myron played for Virginia Tech during their times in college, and it seemed like a foregone conclusion that Daz would be following the family legacy and playing in Blacksburg. Not so fast. Daz said that the Hokies took him for granted in the recruiting process. They offered him late, and Daz decided to go with the Tar Heels. He got the last laugh as well on signing day when he made his announcement. He picked up the Hokies hat first before putting it down and donning the Carolina blue. Since arriving in Chapel Hill, Daz has had plenty of statistical success against the Hokies. He has over 200 yards in the 3 games he's played against Virginia Tech, but he still has not gotten that elusive first victory. 0-3 against Virginia Tech. He'll look to get that first win on Saturday afternoon in Chapel Hill. Guys?
Thanks, Jake. These teams have seen a lot of each other in their long-standing rivalry, with the first matchup dating all the way back to 1895. Virginia Tech leads the all-time series 24-12-6, including 17 wins on the road in North Carolina. Virginia Tech undefeated under the tenure of head coach Justin Fuente, winning 4 in a row. Now, Tyler, North Carolina is favored in this game. What does North Carolina need to do to secure their first win against Justin Fuente?
Well, they need to secure Khalil Herbert and Virginia Tech's offense. Herbert has been dominant in their Virginia Tech's first 2 games of the season. But a bigger factor for North Carolina is exposing the Virginia Tech secondary, which has been depleted due to positive COVID-19 numbers. And we saw Virginia Tech's former opponents in NC State and Duke have much more of an air raid offense than they typically have. North Carolina already an air raid offense, so it'll be interesting to see what the Virginia Tech defense will look like against Sam Howell and the Tar Heels.
You know, last week, Emmanuel Belmar played a huge role in that Virginia Tech defense, limiting Duke's air raid offense with a career-high 3 sacks on his way to earning himself ACC Defensive Player of the Week. And Khalil Herbert, like you touched on, 300 all-purpose yards, 200 rushing, 100 kick returning. A lot of that comes from the Virginia Tech offensive line in the trenches, where they have had 2 ACC Offensive Lineman Players of the Week in the past 2 weeks. Last week, it was Christian Darrisaw. The week before that, it was Brock Hoffman. Virginia Tech has been dominating the trenches against NC State and Duke, looking to do so again here against North Carolina's stellar defensive run defense. On more on Virginia Tech's rush offense and Khalil Herbert, we pass it along to our very own Kevin DiDomenico.
That's right, Clint. Well, the storyline for Virginia Tech has been transfers. The Hokies have been able to revitalize their running game, and that's thanks to, well, transfers. They're third in the nation in rushing offense and are doubling their yards per game from last season. Now, Coach Justin Fuente says, I see them working together as a cohesive unit right now. But what's been that secret ingredient, that one thing that the Hokies have been missing all these years? It's running back transfer Khalil Herbert. The transfer out of Kansas leads the nation in all-purpose yards and yards per game. Coach Justin Fuente says he's not only getting it done on the field, but off the field as well. He says he's a great kid. He's great in the locker room, and he earned number 25, Beamer's number, for Saturday's game against UNC. We'll see if they can pull off the upset Saturday at noon. Guys?
Thanks, Kevin. Now we're going to take a look at our keys to the game. And for me, for Virginia Tech, they're going to have to control Sam Howell and North Carolina's air raid offense. We talked about how their secondary has been depleted due to positive COVID-19 cases, but a lot of people have stepped up on Virginia Tech's defense, including Tyler Matheny last week, who had a lot of defensive statistics, including a sack and an interception. So Virginia Tech's defense, if they can continue that trend of using their backup secondary to contain offenses, it's going to be a lot more of a challenge with North Carolina. But also on the offensive side of the ball for Virginia Tech, their offensive line has to continue to dominate like they have in subsequent weeks. With Khalil Herbert running all over NC State and Duke, they're going to try to use Khalil Herbert again this week against North Carolina.
Now for my keys to the game for North Carolina, first on the defensive end, it's all about stopping Khalil Herbert and forcing Virginia Tech into long passing situations. Depending on who Coach Fuente throws out there, if it's Burmeister, Hooker, or a combination with Patterson, they need to force Virginia Tech into passing situations. Trey Turner has been almost a non-factor so far with Virginia Tech, only having 2 or 3 catches in the first 2 games. So forcing Virginia Tech to throw is a must to stop the run offense. And on the offensive side, it all starts and ends with Sam Howell. 3 interceptions in his first 2 games. He needs to limit those turnovers or free giveaways for Virginia Tech, especially with a depleted secondary. He needs to attack effectively and limit those turnovers to punish Virginia Tech.
We're now going to go to our game picks. Clint and I are going to be on the call for the game. So for predictions, we're going to toss it down to Jake Lyman and Kevin DiDomenico.
Well, if the Hokies were going to be at full strength on Saturday, I would probably go with Virginia Tech. But missing a lot of key pieces in their secondary, I think Sam Howell and that explosive Tar Heels offense is going to tear the Hokies apart. I think in a shootout, UNC wins 45-38.
Well, this rushing attack for Virginia Tech has been too much for every team this season. I think it continues in Chapel Hill. The Hokies will run all over the Tar Heels, defeating them 35-31 in a tight victory.
Thank you, Kevin and Jake. So, Tyler, their picks were split. This game could go down to the wire, just like last year where we had a 6-overtime thriller in Blacksburg. I think it'll come down to who has the ball last at the end of regulation. Now, this game will be played in Chapel Hill this year. Conditions will be less than ideal at kickoff with a noon kickoff on national television, 69 degrees, but 92% chance of rain, only supposed to get worse as the evening goes on. That may drastically change how these coaches game plan.
Yeah, it might limit UNC's air raid offense, as we mentioned earlier, and it might help Virginia Tech, who have a much more defined ground game, as we also mentioned earlier in the show. But that will do it for us here from 3304 Sports. For Clint McLeod, Jake Lyman, and Kevin DiDomenico, as well as Andy Losi and Evan Hughes on our production staff, I'm Tyler Katz. Thanks for watching 3304 Kickoff.